everybody. It's Jake Stanzano, host of Jake and Gino Podcast, here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, chef, the father of six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy, Gino Barber. Gino, how's it going?
Jake, I'm doing good, brother. How you doing today?
Always making it happen, big man. Today's guest is the founder of the Alchemy of Money and a guy who's changing the way we think about wealth. In this episode, we will learn how he helps entrepreneurs take control of their finances, build clarity around money, and unlock real transformation from the inside out. Gino, how do you like me now?
Bro, your hair is fresh. I got to say, you're sounding good today. You're looking good. And this is one of my favorite topics. So I'm happy right now.
Gino, looking good, feeling good. So without further ado, Brandon Green, welcome to the show.
Jake, Gino, good to see you. So real transformation, huh? Okay, all right. Well, we're bringing it today.
We are bringing the pain, but we need to give you credibility now. You know, Gino wants to get to know you a little bit. He wants to slap those butt cheeks. So we got to hear your story and learn a bit about your business background if you're going to be telling us how to do the damn thing, right?
Yeah, happy to go into it. So look, I'm from a small town, Wyoming, Southwest Wyoming, Rock Springs.
Oh, beautiful town.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was thinking you might say. If you have any listeners from Rock Springs, I'd love to hear from you. Anyway, I grew up in Iowa, and then I moved to the Washington, D.C. area in the late 90s looking for quote-unquote opportunity, the big city. I wanted to make a name for myself. So I landed in information technology sales. And I was doing 100 cold calls a day. You know, one of those environments, you ring the bell, you're like, I got a sale, ding, 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 right? And I actually really liked it because I could see clarity of my activity and income. Like, okay, if I make a certain number of calls, I get a certain number. Anyway, I did that for a little while and felt it was, maybe didn't have a lot of meaningfulness in it. And late one night, I was watching an infomercial, Carlton Sheets, how to buy real estate.
I still don't know who this guy is. I've just heard the name a million times. I know of him. He's like a pitcher.
He's the OG, bro. I'm telling you.
He was the first viral marketing influencer, I would say, right? Where he sold courses on how to buy real estate. And I bought the course. And I, quickly realized there's probably more to it than the course. Like, the guy made his money on courses, probably on real estate, right? But hey, it was inspiring. And I was like, all right. So I bought my first property using an FHA 203K loan in Washington, D.C., Capitol Hill, a burned out foreclosure in 1999, 2000. And I hired a contractor, had no idea what I was doing. I renovated it, sold it, made like $40,000. And I thought I was a genius.
Sheets, you did it, Sheets.
It's like, yeah, wow. Like, why don't more people do this? Like, this seems really easy. I mean, of course, now I realize I was just as lucky as anything. I could have easily lost more than that, but it did get me going. And I started in the real estate industry as a result of that investment and decided that I needed to go into sales to generate revenue so I could buy more assets for my portfolio. So very quickly, I made that correlation that if I wanted to have a lot of real estate, I needed to have a lot of sales because I needed a lot of income because I didn't have any, right? I didn't have a trust fund. I didn't have any investors. So that was the beginning, guys, getting into real estate as an investor and realizing I also had to be good at sales in order to generate the revenue necessary to build a portfolio I was interested in building by then.
It sounds like a drug addiction, Gino. Do you remember the old commercial from like the 90s? And it was like, I work hard so I can buy more cocaine, so I can work longer, so I can buy more cocaine. He's saying this was like a don't do drugs commercial. He does sales to get income so he can buy more real estate, and then he has to do more sales income to buy more real estate. It's a very similar trajectory here.
Yeah, this hamster, I wasn't present to the hamster wheel just yet.
Okay.
Right. To me, it was like, the program said I'd be rich and on the beach in 90 days. I was like, well, let's just do that then, right? And, well, turns out there's a little bit more to it.
But you got into it. And then when Jake said the word transformation, you perked up a little bit. And what does transformation to you mean? What does that word symbolize to you?
Well, I can get deep right into it here. Gosh, what is it? 2 in the morning. So what I discovered quickly was I had to change in order to align with the scope of my ambition. Meaning, I had already set for myself early on, it's like big hopes, big dreams. As a matter of fact, I would talk to my financial mentors. I'm like, I am a billionaire, right? And most of them would be like, well, actually, you're not. You're not. I'm like, that's what I'm aspiring to be. And they're like, all right. So, but I
you identified as a billionaire.
Yes, I appreciated, and I'm still identifying as a billionaire. I appreciated, though, that there was a personal journey somebody had to go through in order to make more money and to build more assets and to transform themselves personally and how they operated. So I had to go from quickly, like, all hustle, I'm just going to like do it all myself, to, oh no, like if I really want to scale a multi-million-dollar portfolio, I need other humans also to be part of this equation, which means I needed to get reasonably good at managing people and reasonably good at attracting really great people, which meant I had to sort of change my modus operandi a little bit and figure that part out. I mean, there's a lot in there, right? But that sort of me transforming how I thought about growth from a solo activity to more of a collective group activity in order to get to the goals and ambitions that I had for myself.
What was the allure of the $1 billion net worth?
So I came from a background that, very middle class. My father was a superintendent of schools, started as a teacher and a principal, and then became a superintendent.
That's a big deal in a small town, though. You guys were balling.
Yes. And it was an even more big deal because he was the first person in his family to graduate from high school. So my dad was the guy that transformed our social economic opportunities through education. And he saw that for himself as education was the path to change everything. And so that was amazing, but I didn't identify with education as a path. As a matter of fact, I remember that very difficult conversation I had with my dad and my mom, which was, hey, I actually don't think I want to go to college. And for him, like, going to college and getting ultimately his doctorate degree in education was the thing that completely propelled him to another place, income-wise, socially, and everything else. So I was like, well, then I had to do it in a different way, right? Because I too wanted to take a ladder step up into another space. I don't know that I had a grounding as to why per se. I just was like, well, that looks more interesting than what I saw today. And since I didn't really identify through education as like entrepreneurism is probably where I want to do that. So very quickly, I was like, well, I want to make a lot of money, in part because we didn't have a lot of money. And I wanted to prove to myself and to others that that could be done without a really big, expensive college degree. So that was sort of the beginning of that chip on the shoulder that a lot of entrepreneurs have to grow their situation and make something of themselves.
Now, Jake may think these questions are irrelevant. They don't really matter and all, but I'm going to dive a little bit deeper because to me, this is what life is all about setting goals and making sure that they're the proper goals. So if you're listening to this right now and you're building a $1 billion enterprise, I'm not telling you not to. What I am telling you, though, to do is to do it for the right reasons. Don't go and prove to somebody that you're doing it just to show that you're smarter or that you're better. Do it because you're passionate about it. Do it because you want to make the $1 billion. That's the transformation that I want everyone listening to, at least in my opinion, Brandon. As we get older, because I see a lot of people who are unfulfilled and they're still making hundreds of millions and they're like, this is not what I thought life was all about.
That's super smart. I think early on, Gino, I was doing it to prove to other people that I could. But that had a relatively short shelf life, actually, before that became a bit meaningless. And then I was like, wait a minute. No, like what? I don't need to prove anything else. What can I do for myself? And I felt a change of saying, well, because I'm in a position for whatever reason, like there's an organization of my skills and moment in time and market and opportunity, like then I need to pursue it, right? And so that is what guides me still today, which is, well, how much can I do as a personal journey? And that might sound selfish in some cases, but I think it's really about the biggest expression of myself as I can possibly create. And for me, that happens to be through the vehicle of business, through the vehicle of real estate, through the vehicle of investing. Mm-hmm. Now it's taking 25 years to come to that conclusion, but that journey of oneself and deciding who is oneself. There's a whole nother layer to this, which is I realized I was gay in a very conservative Mormon household, like, oh my God, right? So there was a real early push for me to say, no, I'm going to be my own man. And if that's the case, what does that mean? What does that look like? And how do I then go effectuate that in my life and in the world that I want to create?
So, Brandon, what I'm saying, I see Jake smirking there. I'm not saying not to use that energy and that passion to actually propel yourself and to get some shit done. But then at a certain point, when you got the shit done, you're looking to get more shit done. And it's a never ending hamster wheel. Trust me, I've been on that. And that's important because you're going to get to a point where you have 1,000 doors and you're like, okay, I'm sick of working with investors. I want to do my own gig. What is it for me? And for us, we've pivoted. We don't have investors anymore. We're just dealing with our own capital. We're not looking for these revenue goals. We're looking more for profitability. So as you said, the journey does take its own way and there are different forks in the road. And I just want people to be aware of that. Where you were 10 years ago is not where you are today. Just look back and start taking stock of where your life is and where you want it to go and making goals based upon what your values are and what your objectives are.
I had a good I agree. I had a good mentor early on who's like, what's your big why? Right. And I was like, and I heard all these,
Sorry.
these people are like,
you gotta know it, man.
Yeah. Right. What's your big why? What, save the children in Africa? Right. And I'm like, I don't even want kids. Like, I don't. And then another mentor said, well, what's your small why? What do you want the next 6 to 18 months? And just acknowledge that what motivates you today is going to change. It should. And that is the evolution of happiness and of life. And, Gino, like your early days, it was like hustle, prove myself to somebody else, but that had to change. And, it's very different today than it was even 3 years ago when I sold my big brokerage company and decided to take a couple years off and ultimately found another company. So yeah, it's definitely an evolution. And I think that's what we're talking about transformation, right? A little bit that you got to let yourself do it. You've got to be acknowledge that's a good process. It's not easy. It's actually really painful. You lose relationships often in big transformational inflection points in life. I think that's what it's what it's about.
Mm-hmm. Jake, I see yourself smirking there. People listening to the podcast can't see that smirk, but I know you're just saying.
I don't know, Jake. Do you agree? You disagree? You're like, it's all bullshit, or like, I don't know.
I get a lot of not a ton, but negative comments that I overspeak people, and it's like a thing I do anyway. So I try to keep the restrictor plate on, and I'm not trying to. I already did it once, so I'm trying to keep my overspeaks to 2 or 3 per episode. And so this was me waiting on my back foot for the pitch to come in, and now I can hit the curveball out of the park. So thanks, Gino, for the opportunity to speak. Yeah, no, but you took the words right out of my mouth. Ultimately, I was laughing because of what you said and what came into my mind, and I didn't mean to be rude about it, but I was thinking to myself, shit, there could be a lot of worse things to happen to somebody that was motivated for what could be considered as the wrong reasons, becomes a billionaire, then finds himself, right? There could be a lot worse paths in life, right? So if you have a fuel that lights your ass on fire and the end result is money, and then you realize, shit, this wasn't what I was really striving for. Well, guess what? You took that fire, you created something great out of it, and now you're sitting pretty, and now you can go have a spiritual journey if you so choose, and do it freely and do anything you want because you're financially free.
I'm going to interrupt you right now because
no, you're not, because I was done talking.
My restrictor plate's off. I'm not saying it's good or bad. All I'm saying is it can feel it's a first world problem. I'm not disagreeing with you, but as people. Look at Bill Belichick. Take a look at that guy, for instance. I mean,
dude, you don't know. Bill might be loving life. All right, I think his chick looks evil, from a Disney movie evil, her eyes.
I'm just saying, the guy. He obviously has lost himself. He doesn't know. I don't mean to, but I'm just saying, I've just picked a guy who built this amazing career, built this amazing life. And now he's there going, what am I going to do now? I'm trying to find happiness in everywhere else. And that's just me looking in. I use him as an example. But
but here's the thing. We're judging someone we know nothing about. I could play devil's advocate. The dude's won 7 Super Bowls or 6 or whatever it is, right? He burned out, the owner of the Patriots. He's now going back to coach the team that his dad was a part of. So that's a really cool thing to do. And he's dating a 25-year-old chick. Oh, sucks to be him. I'm just saying, it's not the worst thing in the world. If that makes him happy, I'm not going to fuck with him. I I don't know.
But that's the whole point of this is like you're saying, well, great, you got money, but when you're aspiring to that and you're a high performer and you flipped out of a company making 7 or 8 or 9 figures, then you're stuck going, well, what's my next step? Did I just waste the last 10 years of my life doing something that I really wasn't supposed to be doing or shouldn't have been doing? That's the reflection that people are having, and that's the challenge.
I don't disagree with that either.
Yeah, that's my point. I'm not hating on Bill Belichick.
But through, we grow and change throughout the seasons of life. And, it just depends when these inflection points or realizations hit you that, maybe it's time to shift or pivot, right?
But Jake, my point is, I'm sorry, Brandon, my point is don't do this alone. Get a coach or get somebody to help you out with these inflection points, because when you're going through it, you're pretty much blinded. Like me, I'm so grateful that I have you to speak to on a daily basis, because we do this every day. We talk about our KPIs. We talk about what we want the company to look like. We talk about the culture. We talk about our legacy. We talk about a lot of different things that if you're by yourself, you may be blinded and just focus on like, I'm just going to build a 10,000 unit empire. And then like, you're like, oh crap, why did I do that? Find somebody that
here's the thing, Gino, like that's 100% the case, because I was hoping you were going to get on the call earlier, because I have a little stuck. And if I can just speak it out, it probably, the trees probably open up, right? Like I can start to see, but I can feel that inner gut stuck. So I need a little Gino time. And you got on right at 10 o'clock for the podcast, didn't get any Gino time. So dude, guess what? Afterwards, you're stuck speaking to me. All right.
Okay, brother. I got you. Anyway, Brandon, we throw a lot there.
That's true. Yeah, Brandon's like, what the hell am I doing with these two goofballs? I don't even know where the hell we're at right now. Help me find myself, Brandon.
Yeah. Oh, look, I get it. What's the old adage? That,
I'm sorry, I don't know what the hell
I'm trying to do something with this. I think what comes to mind is, the only people who say money doesn't buy happiness are the people who don't have any money, right? And at the same time, what you find, right, is there is a lot more to it. When I sold my company, I spent like 2 years like wandering in the desert. I felt really
seriously, because people say shit like that. Then I'm like, really? Did you spend 2 years in the desert wandering around? Or were you like in Arizona?
Well, no, I didn't actually go to Arizona, but so I sold the company, and this was right before
you
COVID.
sold the real estate brokerage. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I did. Right before COVID, and then COVID hit, and I really did have an identity crisis, because for 20 years, all I knew of myself was the real estate guy. And then when the company was sold, I kept a lot of my real estate, but I also sold quite a bit of real estate to just like give myself a ton of freedom. I was lost for a while, and it took quite a bit of time, a lot more than I expected, to reset from that. My coach, speaking of coaches, right, he's like, you're going to need like a year or two off to reset. I was like, that's ridiculous. I'm going to have.
I would have called bullshit on that too. I'd be like, screw yourself.
Give me 90 days, 180 days. I got to have something new standing up. And I didn't. I had a lot of bad ideas and made a handful of bad investments, a couple good ones, but it did take a couple years before I could really let go of that old identity and create something new. So, but the inflection point, it was a powerful inflection point. I'm very grateful I had the opportunity to do that sort of long.
Were you rusty from the position that you're in, and you needed to find like a little bit of like grit again, or what do you think the root cause of that was?
I didn't of the time it took to sort of.
Well, it sounded like, and so I may be hearing you incorrectly, but it was like, okay, so you're successful, you're running the business, and then you sold it, and then you made a couple bad investments, you're kind of meandering, and I'm like thinking to myself, when I hear that, it sounds like you needed to re-engage to a certain degree and then sharpen your skills, because you may have gotten a little complacent. That's how I'm receiving that, but it may be incorrect.
What I think it was is what I thought I wanted after the sale turned out to not be what I wanted. What I thought I wanted.
You thought you were going to be Carlton Sheets on the beach.
Yeah.
And let's go back to Dad for a second, because Dad believed in education, and clearly you did too. It was just a different style, apparently.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
So.
Well, you just proved my point, Brandon. That's the point that I was trying to get to. I mean, like, and don't have this journey all by yourself. Go out and hire somebody. I've done a lot of work on myself personally to say that, wow, it's not just about making money. Money is just the result. What do I want to do to make myself create what I call happy money in my life? Because I wrote a book, Happy Money, Happy Family, Happy Legacy, through the guidance of Ken Honda. He wrote the original Happy Money book. And I'm not saying money's going to make you happy, but at least do some activities that bring joy, and then earning money, and then money is the result. That's my point.
100%. So I sold the company, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna be a consultant. I'm gonna do some investing. I'm gonna play tennis in the mornings, so yoga in the afternoons. And let me tell you, I was bored out of my mind after just a handful of weeks. I was like,
You probably had to switch to pickleball at your age.
I did switch to pickleball. But I was like, yeah, no, this isn't, this isn't for me. I was just bored.
This is fun on vacation. I don't think I want to do this full time.
No,
right?
and I should have known that, right? Vacation is vacation. That's not real life. And I'm in my 40s.
It is for my wife. My wife could be a permanent vacationer. Only person I've ever met would be completely fine with that. I don't get it.
Guys, what's interesting? I want to go back because we've skipped all the meat of like, how did you scale? But what's interesting is someone is such a high performer as Jake or as yourself, Brandon. They're not going to become financially free and quit and go on a beach. The people who want to do that will never achieve freedom because they don't have the work ethic or the vision to be able to do that. That's the irony of life. There's only about 5 or 6%. It's about 6% of the people that can actually achieve that. And when they do achieve it, that's not really what they were striving for. They were striving more for autonomy, to have the freedom to be able to say, hey, I could go to the beach, but I'm probably not going to do that. I'm going to get on a podcast with Jake and Gino. I'd rather do that and have fun doing that than being out there playing pickleball at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday.
Yes. I heard it in the following, which was, I wanted to organize my life. Well, life, I think, is organized into what you should do, what you need to do, and what you want to do. What you should do, what you need to do, and what you want to do. I wanted to eliminate all should. Like, I will always do what I need to do for whatever that is.
Sorry, in that order: should, need, want.
Should, need, want. I will always do what needs to be done, and I want to do what I want to do, but I want to eliminate anything that I should do, right? The obligation to other structures, other organizations, other agendas. So for me, freedom was the elimination of should. So I'm very thoughtful about that now. When stuff pops up on my calendar, I'm like, I don't know. Do I want to do it? I'll do it. Do I need to do it? I'll do it. But is it a should?
Give me an example of a should.
A should is taking a meeting with a potential investor that is, more than a jerk, but you need their money.
So you kill that.
Yeah, you should do it. Maybe you really, right? But you don't want to do it, right?
That's financial freedom. That gives you the ability to say, I don't really need that. That's why money can make your life
I'll give you
happier.
an example in our life. So we're about to open an amazing venue in Maryland, about 90 minutes northwest DC, 66-acre estate, weddings, corporate retreats. We've been working on it for 5 years. We did not take any investors in it because I didn't want to deal with the pain in the ass. That's why it's like telling us which light fixtures or whatever, right? So we've organized.
Let your vision succeed or die. It's on you, and it feels good.
It's on us, and it's been hard. And there have been plenty of times where I'm like, no, maybe we should have been backed by something. But no. The freedom for us was not doing that, and so we wanted to do it. We're doing things that we need to do, but we don't have any obligations to other people that we should.
Dude, I've never heard this, and I like it.
Yeah, it's really powerful. If you sit with it for a while, start to look at your calendar.
It took me a minute to get it. It really did.
Yeah. Because we do most of our life around should, right? But if you start to say, what do I need to do? You'll always do what you need to do as a successful person. And so check all, the stuff on my calendar I need to do for my business or my relationship or my health or whatever. Like, I don't want to go to the gym, but I need to go to the gym. So I go to the gym, right? And what do I want to do? Well, I want to have lunch with, but eliminate all the should. The more that's gone, the closer I think you are.
And you decide what a should and what a need or a want is. Like, you could say, I should eat healthy. But if you set standards for yourself that say you need to eat healthy, it becomes a need, like it's how you're bucketing it. Yeah. I got it. It took me about 15 minutes. I'm slow on the uptick, but I can sprint now.
Glad you're with us, Jake.
Yeah. But now like try to keep up with me, though. I'm telling you. All right.
I'm going to put the restrictor plate back on him. Hold on a second, Jake. There goes the plate. Ka-ching! Back on, baby. So I want to go back because we jumped in because it's interesting. If you have this mindset, even when you're not financially free, I think it will help you and it will propel you to be able to do it. But let's go back into the earlier days. How did you scale the company? I mean, you're by yourself, you're doing deals, sales, deals. What are some of the things that you did to help you scale the organization?
One big realization that I'll never forget, I was big enough both in my portfolio and in the real estate sales side that I needed some help. So I burned through like 4 assistants, and I finally found one. And she was really good, and we were getting along really well. 6 months in, she comes into my office, pops her purse on my desk, and she goes, "Yeah, so I'm resigning." I was like, "What? What do you mean?" Like we got, and I was so frustrated because I'd gone through so many assistants and finally found one, and now she was resigning. "Well, I found another opportunity. I wasn't really looking," and I was like, "Don't bullshit. Like, what's really going on?" And I'll never forget, her whole demeanor changed, and she leaned in and she goes, "You know what? You're a bit of an asshole to work for.
You're
I
a
don't know how to deal with it."
monster.
And I was like,
Did her face turn red?
"No, she wasn't mad about it. She was just like matter of fact about it." And she was like, she didn't need to work for me for that. She didn't need to deal with that.
Damn, that hurts. That stings.
And at first I was very defensive. Like, "What do you mean I'm not, But then I was like, oh, and over time, she helped me learn a valuable lesson around scale, which was, if I was to grow something substantial, I needed to have a lot of talented people around me. And talented people don't put up with bullshit around like, you have to treat them a certain way. You have to empower them. You have to lead them. You can't just come in like a seagull and tell them all this stuff you got to do and then leave and then come back and be like, why isn't all this stuff done? So she transformed at that first iteration, my leadership style, where I was like, oh no, I have to figure out the human thing. I have to figure out how these people around, like, what do I do with all these people? And that was a huge change in my mindset. It didn't happen immediately. I mean, it took another year or so, but I can look back on that lesson.
Were you able to retain her?
No, I was not.
She still flew the coop, but you learned from that one interaction. I thought you were going to tell like this story where you're like, "Oh, please, Betty, don't do it, and I'll change my ways."
No, almost all my lessons end in fire.
Oh shit! Okay.
And and that was really hard in the organization. And it wasn't the first time, it wasn't the last time that happened. But every time somebody that I thought was really capable and should have been with the organization did leave, there was a lesson in that for me of why I was unable to either cast a big enough vision to keep a talented person or to align their opportunity with mine in such a way they were motivated by themselves to advance the vision of the organization or what have you. So, step number 1 in scale is you've got to figure out how to lead people. And that's really hard for most entrepreneurs who are solo hustle oriented. Like, if it's up to me, or if it's going to be, it's up to me, right? Well, that only takes you so far. And that lesson was a lesson it took a long time to learn.
Before you go on to any other lessons, my question would be, as far as reflecting, what made you, in your words, an asshole to work with or to be?
Yeah, I was very short in my description of what needed to be done. I made a lot of assumptions about what people knew or how they would approach things, and I micromanaged how somebody would do it. Instead of saying, this is the objective, this is what needs to be done, you're a talented person, you figure out how. I was like, no, I'm going to show you all the how along the way that I did, which often was just the way I did it, but not the best way to do it, certainly, and not the way that person would do it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
can I speak to that for a second?
Yeah.
No, so Gino and I have been working together since 2011. And it wasn't until probably the last year or two that I realized to back off with that in a way, and that there can be a goal, an end goal of where we're trying to get to. I might do it a certain way. Another team member might go right. Another team member might go left.
Yes.
Most roads are going to get there. And I only really speak up now unless it's going to be truly financially damaging or take so long that it's like, well, we got to stop. And if you ask the person, like, how do you see us getting there? What will you do in that situation? They're going to probably get there in a similar fashion, even though it looks different from you, and you got to be okay with that. That was hard. That was very hard to get past it. But then you're like, shit, nothing changes. People like me more. It's a more harmonious culture now than saying, no, you have to do it exactly this way. It's such a simple thing, and I feel like such a dumb shit that it took me so long to realize it.
Yeah. I had a meeting just yesterday, actually, with our team at Alchemy. We do taxes, bookkeeping, right? So we have tax pods where we have a CPA, a junior accountant, and a tax admin, and they're responsible for about 250 or so tax returns. This one particular pod has been a little bit slow. So I said, look, the number's 10. You got to turn out 10 tax returns a week. Now, I'm not telling them how to do that. And I'm not showing them like I hired talented people. They know how to get the tax returns done. And all I'm saying is the number's 10. So I'll see you on Friday. Report to me what the number is. Right? That's the product of many years of managing people. Previously, I would have been like, okay, so this is what I think the 10-step process ought to be. Now, like, no. Like, I hired you. And the big benefit in this discipline is I'm actually not a CPA. So, I'm not going to actually do your
maybe
tax
helping you.
Yeah, exactly. It actually has helped a lot in building this company because I'm not the practitioner of the actual work. But anyway, I think that the clarity of the outcome, the clarity of the standards that the customers to receive during that outcome is what talented people need. And then you want to coach them and consult them and be available to them to bounce ideas off. But if you start to tell them exactly how it needs to be done, that doesn't last long. Generally, for talented people, they don't stick around.
Mm-hmm. Before we go to the short answers, I'd like to jump in a little bit about sales because you've got a sales background.
Yeah.
Some, I guess, tips on selling. Because not everyone thinks of sales as they all got to do this cold call and they've all got to there's a certain way to do it. Some of the skills that you had that made you really good at sales.
Yeah. So I think of sales in two buckets, short-term and long-term.
Mm-hmm.
So short-term generally is transactional, usually requires a set of activities like cold calling, door knocking, or prospecting, or marketing-based initiatives that have direct calls to action and funnels and so forth. That is short-term oriented, transactionally oriented sales activities. And everybody, I think, in business needs to figure that out to some degree because that's usually how stuff gets started, right? But the longer you're in it, the more you realize the most powerful sales are the long-term relationship, partnership type of sales, where it's not onesie twosies, it's tens, 100s, 1000s. What I didn't appreciate early on, but now I see, is the relationships you build during the transactional short-term sales today are tomorrow's long-term substantial partnerships. So how you treat those people in transactional short-term sales today matters tremendously for your future to make sales easier down the road when you can call upon those relationships to do bigger and bigger deals as your life and their life move into bigger and bigger opportunities. So I think connecting the dot of short-term, long-term, what you will see in one's career is it starts as 99% short-term, 1% long-term, but as time goes on, it moves much more to 99% long-term, 1% short-term. So that sort of concept of evolution of two buckets and an evolution of short-term, long-term relationships and transactional sales is how I see sales.
It's interesting. Before we go to the short answers, Jake, I was just mentioning this to you last week about dealing with certain sellers and some of them are just transactional. And it's very difficult to try to play a win-win. And if you give them something, they're nibbling, they're taking, right? But you it's not, I won't say rare, but it's uncommon. We found one that hey, they love what we do. They love what we say we do. They love to do work with us. They're out there doing extra work for us when we're closing in a deal. That's the kind of person that you want to do. And if you could find even a couple of those
repeat business with.
Yeah. Repeat business. If you could find a couple of those, whether it's a community bank, a credit union, a seller, a broker, that is worth its weight in gold. But you need to hold up your end of the bargain as well. And I guess you need to just be judicious on who you work with and see what their style is.
And you have to stay in touch with people for a long time to let those seeds really grow to a place where you can harvest a lot of them all at once. So, that I think that has been really rewarding for me now. I can see that because I'm able to call upon people today that are in a position of life to help us with what we're doing from an investing standpoint or a business standpoint in a substantial way that I sold a house to 20 years ago, right? Or that was one of the investors in my first single family hold, right? And now that person is, running a $500 million venture capital fund, right? Wow. So that's been really interesting to see that evolution over time.
I love that.
You know what's weird about that is, at least in our market, I don't know why, I started in this market when I was 29. Okay. And the people I've gotten along with the best and had those recurring relationship sales types things, brokers, whatever it may be, were folks in their 60s. And it's almost like they didn't realize it until they were in their 60s. And the problem is that they've come in, and some of them have retired over time. And I'm like, oh man, it sucks when this person is going to go. And then it's like sometimes there's new people that sort of enter the mix that are older. But the weird thing for our business, Gino and mine, is that the people that we've had success with this have been older and then tend to retire. And it's like the younger folks, for some reason, they've been more transactional, and we haven't had the relationships like that. Just a weird observation. It might be unique to us, but anyways. So, all right, gang, let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsor.
This episode of the Jake and Gino Podcast is brought to you by Wheelbarrow Profits, the premier multifamily education community. Wheelbarrow Profits proof is in their results. Their members have closed over 86,000 units. That's over $5 billion in student deal volume. Are you serious about taking your real estate game to the next level? Do you have the confidence to take action? Schedule a call with the Wheelbarrow Profits team today and supercharge your real estate knowledge. Build lasting relationships through unparalleled networking opportunities. Obtain lasting knowledge on how to buy multifamily real estate with intensive training. Gain hands-on experience through their live events with like-minded individuals and industry professionals, all while experiencing the personal touch and family atmosphere that set them apart. Visit wheelbarrowprofits.com for more information.
All right, we are back. We were kind of going in a million different directions earlier, and I had a note here. And what I need to understand is, what did you realize during COVID that it was that you wanted? So you were, we were kind of going back and forth, and you were telling about the wandering through the desert and things, and we never got to what happened.
So, as sort of esoterically, I realized what I wanted was freedom to create without limitation. Specifically, what I realized was I love real estate, and I also love business, and I love finance, and I also love coaching and teaching and consulting, and came to this realization that I could do that through what is now today Alchemy, where we help real estate entrepreneurs with their finances. So I was like, okay, I want to create, I want to be free, but I also want to do it through the vehicle of something specific that aligns a lot of my personal interests. Oh, by the way, it looks like there's a market opportunity for a business to be set up in that space.
So unpack that more. Yeah, the Alchemy.
So Alchemy today, we help real estate entrepreneurs with their finances, bookkeeping, generation of profit and loss statements, balance sheets, strategic tax planning, tax issues, doing all your taxes, payroll, all the back-end finance work that a real estate investor, a real estate agent, or broker needs, specifically in the real estate sector. So if you had a franchise of French or restaurants, we won't be able to help you. Like, it's just in real estate. And what we discovered in that, and is that I essentially have created the company I wish I would have had when I was growing my own real estate practice around the support financially that real estate entrepreneurs really need to achieve their goals. So, we help people sleep better at night and achieve their goals financially. And we happen to do that through bookkeeping and tax services.
Jake, can I ask a quick question real quick? To me, this is important because I know a lot of real estate agents and real estate brokers. What are some of the things that they're doing wrong right now that they should say, hey, I need to really look at Alchemy, that they may not be seeing, because they may not know what they don't know right now. And you've been through it all.
So people come to us usually because one of two things is happening. Either they're about to make a big hire and expand their enterprise, and they're not sure that they're financially ready to do it. Or they're coming to us because they're like, I think I'm paying too much in taxes. Or maybe they even have a tax issue. And what they realize, both of those folks, is that that's the outcome they're trying to generate. But usually the lead indicator is the lack of good, clear, clean, transparent financial data. They don't actually have profit and loss statements and balance sheets reconciled to the month. They don't have a system to interpret that data to tell them anything at all. They don't have a written strategic tax plan. They just have tax tips via ChatGPT or on a class that's not contextualized to themselves. So they realize, oh, okay, there's a lot of foundational elements that have to be in place in order to receive all the benefits that real estate investors and entrepreneurs are able to access through the U.S. tax code and through the amazing vehicle of investing in real estate. So, like I talked to somebody yesterday who's like, I want to say, I think I could save a lot of money. And I was like, yeah, I think you could. We put their data into some software and like, here's $85,000 worth of tax savings. So like, great, sign me up today. I was like, well, here's the thing. The IRS requires from you all these things in order to get the $85,000. So we've got to set up some compliance standards. We got to set up bookkeeping standards. You can't just, take the 85K. You have to actually earn the 85K through processes and procedures. That's how the system works. So that is often a disconnect, Gino. It's like, I want the benefit, but what do we actually have to do to get there? And we help people close that gap.
It's interesting because as people grow and scale, specifically in the real estate space, you see three core deficiencies in their business compared to an established corporation. And it's the HR, human resources side of things. It's the tax systems, and then it's the organizational, cultural systems of running the day-to-day cadence of accountability, if you will. And so I think there's a huge need for this. And I remember in our early days, we outsourced to this bookkeeping company. Well, no, I would get so pissed, and I would do what you were trying to do. I'm not a tax guy, but because they were dealing with other clients at the time, and they, it wasn't the best relationship, I was having to create these spreadsheets to ensure that, hey, there's enough money in the accounts and the way the bills are being paid, and we're not going to like bounce this or something like that. And it was awful trying to like create their systems for them. And there's a huge need for this done right, because they were serving a bunch of other customers. It was bad. Eventually we took it all in house and we figured it out, but it was like, this would have been a huge benefit to us early on, and maybe we wouldn't even have done it over time if it would have worked.
I mean, you start your real estate career as an investor or a broker or whatever, and you just do what you got to do to make it work. But over time, what you realize is you have 16 bank accounts, 15 credit cards, 4 million LLCs, most of which are expired, an S corp here and there, a random C corporation, commingling across your entire enterprise, and all you're doing is moving cash around, trying to keep the thing afloat. Mm-hmm. Well, at some point, that crashes and burns. And so everybody has to eventually, if you're going to grow anything of size, you get organized around that stuff. For me, early in my career, I got audited by the IRS. Right, the IRS came in and it was like, yeah, no, you owe $500,000. I was like, what? So
I think it's time to professional up.
I think it's time to get some systems. So it was a very expensive lesson for me, and the many people end up developing systems as a result of pain, not the other way around.
You weren't really bullshitting us before. Your problems really end up in fires, huh? I mean, it's not like it's $500,000 is a lot of money back then. I mean, like that would have really scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, a lot of money. It took a long time for me to climb out of that hole. The irony of life, right? Is that, and now I own a firm that helps people.
Well, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Lesson learned. Check.
Was there a process that you used during COVID for getting unstuck and finding your clarity?
So I did have a paid coach, and I had several friends and mentors that I would bounce different ideas off of, kind of directions I was taking things about once a month. And I just tried some stuff. So I tried some online courses. I was like, no, a lot of saturation in that space. That it makes
too
sense.
Carlton Sheetsy.
Too Carlton Sheetsy. Yes, exactly. I was like, I don't think so. I invested in a couple other businesses. I was like, I'm not going to be your like investor guy. I wanted to get in and operate. I tried to change the zoning for the project that we have in Maryland, spent $500,000 in 2 years doing that and failed. So I just like tried a bunch of stuff and was paying attention to where's there a product market fit, but where does my heart get excited? Like what is it that is beyond a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months of excitement that I could really latch into for the next decade? And, that took some time. We traveled, even though it was COVID, did our best to travel around quite a bit and explore the world. And I did a lot of writing. I wrote a book that I haven't published. But that was a great cathartic experience for me to get all that out. And I went back to the coach who told me it was going to take 2 years to pivot. I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. And,
Shit.
yeah, exactly. So it was a very valuable and rewarding time.
Anything else to say about alchemy, and the best way for folks to find out more?
Yeah, so the best way to find out more is go to our website. Go to alchemyofmoney.co, not com. That was like 20 grand purchase. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Alchemyofmoney.co.
It's so much easier. You don't even need the M.
Exactly, right? Simplified.
Alchemy.co. It sounds like mysterious, like alchemy too.
Alchemyofmoney.co. Actually, that's kind of interesting. So why the name alchemy, right? So money for a lot of people is a bit mysterious. Like, I don't know, it either works or doesn't. They're rich, there's poor. So it has sort of this allure, this magical sense to it, which is one of the definitions of alchemy. The other definition of alchemy, though, is formulaic. And in money, actually, the more you learn about it, it's very formulaic. There's processes, there's procedures, there's rules, there's ways to make it grow and ways to make it shrink. So you approach money at first, if you don't have any, thinking it's a bit mystical. But the more you learn about it, the more you realize it's not. It's actually extremely formulaic. So I like the word alchemy because of its dual meaning, particularly as it relates to the journey a lot of people have around money.
How can we turn real estate into gold, Gino? You don't have to. It already is. No, I don't know. All right, Gino, take us home.
Before I wrap up the show, Brandon, one book that I think all the listeners should listen to, you may have even read it, is The History of Money. I think the author's last name is Weatherford. I'm probably 60 pages into it. And very interesting how money started. Actually, the printing of money was started by the Lydians back in like 600 BC, where the whole problem with money was, listen, logically, the whole problem with money was it was the transfer, right? So you have money here, and you used to use cattle, you used to use other things as forms of money. But once the Lydians and the Greeks latched onto it, its portability, and they started actually using gold coins or whatever, it was easier to actually have merchandise and supply, and that's why the wealth was created. The problem is, as you're reading the history of money, you have the Romans come in. They don't produce anything. All they do is conquer and take other people's money. Then they start debasing the currency, which is, wow, what's going on right now. That's what currently ultimately leads to their downfall. And then you start listening and reading the history of the Knights Templar, where they were for a couple hundred years became the wealth of the Crusaders, and they were not hoarding. They were actually transferring money, and they were like the bank of Europe for a couple hundred years until King Philip called them heretics because he wanted their money. And King Philip ultimately ends up down the downward spiral of taking a currency with 100% silver, making it 90%, making it 80%, creating a massive amount of inflation, putting more money into the system, and then ultimately the system fails. And the way people perceive money nowadays it's very interesting how it's completely changed now with Bitcoin and online. And I think just everyone, if you have an ability to read that book, it's just a phenomenal look at money. And it's just, money is just ultimately, it's a result. That's really what it comes down to. If you're really good at something, you're ultimately going to create more of it. And then what you end up doing with it is what Brandon said. I'll wrap it up this way. Make some income. Get that income off of one side and save it and put part of that into a vehicle that's going to create more income for yourself. You didn't need to do this 40, 50 years ago. Our parents are great with one job in the middle class. Things are different now. That's what the goal is. If you're a real estate agent making a couple hundred grand a year in commissions, take 20 or 30 or 40 of that, put that into a limited partnership, into a real estate deal, put that into a mutual fund as a holding tank, and then start utilizing it. And if you can continue to do that and have the discipline to do that, one day you're going to wake up and go, oh, I've got some money saved and I'm producing assets. What I love about your story is your dad's all into education, got the PhD, and you're like, Dad, I don't want to go to college, and I really don't want to work for anybody either. I'm unemployable. I'm a perfect guest for the Jake and Gino show because that's who we have on. We have on entrepreneurs who don't want to sit in a cubicle, who are just crazy and just they're maniacal in their pursuit of what's going to make them great. And throughout the journey, seeing the transformation of getting to the real estate space, buying some deals, opening up brokerages, then selling brokerages, getting stuck and saying to yourself, what's the next step? And not jumping into the next step, but going through the journey. And that's the transformational process. And then being able to look back at all of the mistakes, all the dumpster fires that you've had and said, what's the learning lesson in that? Oh, I owe 500 G's to the IRS. It's going to take a couple of years to get out of it. Let me start a company that helps real estate investors. And what's really cool about it is you finally figured out what lights you on fire, where your passion is, and ultimately how to monetize it. Because if there's no margin, then there's no mission. So the whole part of it is you need to make money to continue the mission along. But are you creating, you having the right mission to be able to create that money? That's what I think, Brandon, you figured out. And that's what I think most of us listening to this podcast are striving and wanting to do. Jake, back to you, brother.
Gino, you had me at the Knights of Templar. Gang, as always, we believe in buying deals for the long term. Think in decades. I'm Jake. He is the G Daddy. We make it happen. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.